if you're watching this video, you probably want to design a board game, and if that's the case, I'm super dang excited because I've got 3 tips for you on how to get started. Things that you should know as you are learning how to be a game designer. This is one of my favorite things in the world. I love designing board games. I think that I have something really valuable to share with you on what I've learned so far. These tips are all 3 incredibly important. I think the last one is going to be the most useful thing that's going to give you an advantage as a game designer. It's going to save you time. It's just going to be great. And the first tip is honestly so easy. It's something that as an aspiring game designer, when I heard that this was super important to becoming a game designer, I was like, this is great. This is the best thing that you could have told me. Hey guys, I am Evan and we are Being Friends, and we're a channel dedicated to sharing with you how board games can help you connect with others. And today, and hopefully in a lot of other videos in the future, we're a channel dedicated to helping you learn to design your board game. Nearly every single board gamer has an idea, at least one game that they have in their head that they just want somebody to design, and I'm here to tell you that that person is you. Whatever that idea is, whether or not you're gonna end up designing that game or come up with another one, I highly encourage you at least try it, because for me, it's incredibly fun and it's one of my favorite things to do ever. So I hope that all of these tips are really helpful for you and help you to start your game design project. So let's just dive in. Meant to say dive in, but honestly, in this video, we're gonna be driving in. So let's dive into these tips, starting with the first one as it goes. This one is, again, it's something that I think you're gonna be happy to hear. The first thing that you need to do if you want to be a board game designer is play more games. That's all you gotta do. Similar to how an aspiring director must watch tons of films and how an aspiring writer just needs to read as many books as possible, if you are an aspiring game designer, this is huge because there is an insane amount of variety of games already created. There are thousands and thousands of fantastic games that already exist across all sorts of genres, all sorts of mechanics, all sorts of themes, and every single one of those games can teach you something. This is no longer just something you do for fun. It is now research. And this is great. So now you get to play games, learn about game design through that, and that's going to help you to design your own games eventually, because you've been studying, you've been learning all about games. But there is some things that I want to explain about this, because it is a little bit different than just playing for your own enjoyment. There is a little more that you're going to want to think about, questions you're going to want to ask yourself as you are playing your games. These questions are going to be the key to unlocking a board game design lesson in every single game you play. It's going to be hugely valuable because every single game has something new and different to teach you, and these questions are going to help you to find what you can learn. Because approaching playing a game as research is a little bit different than just playing it normally. It still is very fun, and if you're interested in learning more about what makes a good game good and what makes a well-designed game and how you can design a game well, then thinking about these things is going to make playing the games maybe even more fun. And that's certainly how it's been for me. As I've dove more deep into the hobby and into game design, and I've asked myself these questions countless times, it has skyrocketed my love, my appreciation, my respect for game designers and for the games that they created, because now I understand it even more. So I really think this is going to transform the way that you play games, and it's going to make it that you are no longer just playing for fun, but it's actually research and it's study. One caveat before I get into what these questions are, I will say this: don't just play your favorite genre of games. Don't just play games that you know are good. Try your best to play as large of a variety of games as possible. If you don't like war games and you want to be a game designer, it could be really, really useful to play some war games and start to learn what makes those games good, just so you have a better tool set to pull from whenever you are making a game. If you are making a game that, while it's not a war game, might have combat in it, you can pull from Root, for instance, and be like, okay, if I make war play out like this, then maybe that's a perfect fit for your game. And not to suggest directly stealing a mechanic, but the idea is you've seen how these games work, and you can use that for whatever game you're designing. This is true among all sorts of genres, all sorts of mechanics and themes. Like I said, because there's so much variety in board games, it is super valuable to play as many different games as possible. On top of that, don't just play games that you like. Play the ones that you don't like and start to figure out, actually I think that's one of the questions, so get ready for the why on that one, because yeah, my advice to you is apparently play games you hate. Don't have fun. The reason why you want to play such a large variety of games is because, one, you're going to have a much better understanding of all of the different places that games can go. There are so many games that take you on a journey and that give you a completely unique experience that no other game has, and if you get to play as many of those as possible, then you have all of a sudden broadened the possibility for your game. The second reason why it's so important to play a large variety of games is because since there are so many different places a game can go, if you have experienced as many of those as possible, you are going to be much more well equipped when you are trying to design your game. If you have an idea and you have all of these different tools, you can pull from the perfect one that's a perfect concept for that game that you're designing to explore. This is going to make your game much better realized, more relevant, more innovative, and honestly, it's going to help you get your game from good to fantastic. Now that you know that you need to play more games, and not just more, but a lot of variety of games, here's how you can turn that into research. These are 4 questions that you can ask yourself when you're playing a game that's going to teach you a lot. So I've got PAX Premier 2nd Edition set up right now. This is one of my favorite games. It's so good for so many reasons, and that brings me to the first question that you should ask yourself when you're playing a game for study. What makes this game we're playing good? What makes it good? Being able to articulate this, being able to understand specifically about how the game is designed well and what makes that true, just gives you the skill set needed to see when a game works. And that is huge, because when you are designing a game, one of the main aspects of designing the game is actually playing it and asking basically all 4 of these questions I'm going to bring to you. Is that right? Oh, yep, exactly that. Exactly. Basically, when you're playtesting your game, you're going to be asking yourself the same questions, but these ones are tried and true. These ones are published. They're successful for some reason or another. So, with PAX Premier, for instance, what makes this game good? Well, I could tell you so many reasons. If you want me to do it, the way that you chain actions together is both limited but so crunchy at the beginning, and then as you develop your board state, the amount of stuff you can do becomes more and more in such a very fantastic way, as well as the main battle going on in the center of the board, vying for control of specific areas, as well as how loyal you are to the different coalitions, is brilliant. And this game plays out so fantastically. The economy is fascinating, and I could go on. And I'm not giving a review of PAX Premier, but what I'm saying to you is, when you're playing the game, don't just say, that was fun. Say, here's what I think the game does really well. Here's what makes this game so well designed, or not. And that immediately segues us to the second question. What makes this game bad? That's right. This is as important to ask yourself. Like I said, as you're playtesting your own board game, knowing how to recognize what doesn't work is equally, if not more important than knowing what makes a game good. So you have to be able to look close at a game's design and say, here's what breaks down. Here's what makes this game have cognitive dissonance with its theme and its mechanics. Even if I'm wrong, or even if that's just an opinion, it got me to look close at a game and answer that question for me, because you're going to be doing that all the time. All the time. Your goal as a game designer is to playtest your game and see where it breaks down and fix it. It's all about problem solving, and so you have to be able to assess a game and find the problem. So I recognize a problem. Maybe I'm super good at coming up with solutions. That's a valuable asset as a game designer. But if you never learn how to recognize the problem in a game, then you don't have anything to solve, or at least that's how it seems to you, right? So asking yourself what makes this game bad is going to help you to do that. Learning or asking yourself what makes a game good helps you to find the fun, the good design, the well-oiled machinery of a game. And asking yourself what makes a game bad helps you to find the problems, and that's going to be how you can make your game so much better. If you are really good at finding a problem in a game, you're in good shape. Before we move on to the third question, it's important for me to note that a very good game can have some bad qualities, and a very bad game can have some good qualities. And in fact, calling a game just bad, you're not going to learn anything. Being like, oh, this is a bad game. Similar to how saying just this is a fun game isn't going to teach you anything either. You have to ask yourself why. So referring to specific things, what specific things that are maybe bad about the game is much more productive, and you're going to learn much more than just writing off a game as bad because it did something wrong, or maybe a lot of things wrong. But it's still so important to look closer and ask why, and even challenge yourself. What makes the bad games good? It's just that perspective shift and just learning more about essentially game design through games that have already been designed. The third question is almost playing off of the first two. It's asking a more specific question that to me is one of the most generally true thing about all good games, is that they do this well. The next question is kind of multiple questions, but here's what it is. How does this game utilize its mechanics to support its theme? And how does this game utilize its theme to support its mechanics? And how do both of these come together to facilitate an experience? Specifically, the experience might be the most important thing about the game. We'll talk about that in another video. This question brings into the picture one of the most important things in game design of all time, and we'll touch more on that later, but for now I'll give you a brief description on why the theme, mechanics, and experience, and the relationship between these three things, why it matters so much. Any good game is a combination of theme, mechanics, and experience, and while not every game values each aspect equally, every game keeps that in mind at least a little bit, or it completely ignores one of the aspects, and that's okay as well. A lot of the best games of all time use the mechanics to lend to the theme, and use the theme to make the mechanics much more exciting. What's brilliant is when a game mechanic is the same across multiple games, but the theme is different, and that makes the entire thing feel different. There's a great example of this exact thing happening with the two games, can't remember exactly, I believe it's Incan Gold and something about firefighters. If anyone knows this exact reference, then please comment down below, let me know, because the idea was there was some research done that basically asked the question, how do people respond generally to this game, and how do people play it compared to the other game? Both games, you're going deeper and deeper into somewhere. In Incan Gold, you're mining for gold, so you're going into a mine. And in the firefighter rescue one, you're going into a burning house. What they found was that people played this entirely differently, even though it was essentially the same game, because when I'm pushing my luck out of greed to get more and more gold, it's just a whole different experience than if I'm going to push my luck so I can be a hero and save people's lives. The idea is, if the mechanics are exactly the same and the theme is different, that can be a dramatically different experience. And you can have two completely identical themed games with different mechanics, and that's a different experience as well, because all of this comes together to create your game. Completely different than every other game in the world. So again, just asking yourself the question while you're playing games is going to be incredibly important, just to get you more equipped to implement these ideas into your own game. This is a great example. It really honestly is. I'm gonna have to do some videos about Pax Mirror. Maybe we'll do a gameplay video. Let me know if you want to hear anything about this game. It's so dang good. I'm so glad I bought it. It's pretty expensive, but I knew I had to own it when the board was this like linen material. Probably not linen. I don't even know anymore. And you have these like chalky, chunky pieces that it's just great. And also it's brilliant. So anyways, and the last question is this. Why do I personally like or dislike a game, despite the good or bad qualities. I guess not always, despite. Anyways, there are games that I think are really, really great, and they're not for me. And there are games that I love that are perfect for me that aren't for somebody else. There's games that have some bad qualities and it's like, I honestly don't care about that at all. It's still great. Like, I'm trying to think of an example with like a game with massive flaws that don't bother me whatsoever. None of the games I like have flaws. This is so important because, first of all, you get to know your own tastes as well. And for me, it's really important to be able to describe what I personally like, why I like something or why I don't, whether or not I think it's actually good, and separating that is important to me. But knowing your preferences more and more is honestly mostly a means to an end when it comes to learning how to be a better game designer. Essentially, it's so important to know your target audience when designing a game. Who am I making this game for? What kind of person? What do they love in a game the most? And designing for that person is going to create a much better game because it's going to be something that somebody will love. Instead of a game that most people will generally like, you're much better off making a game that these specific people will love. So basically, just I think the practice of asking yourself what your personal preference is and discussing that with other people, hearing about them as well, just gets you into the mindset that the player matters in this. It's not just a game that's good. It's about 1 to infinite players interfacing with the game and that experience that's happening. And if you take the players out, you got nothing. There's nothing being played. You just have to keep in mind the player. It is basically essential, and if you forget that and you're just looking at a game in a vacuum, you're not going to get anywhere. And the game might be well designed, but it's so much more important to consider who the game is for and how you can serve them, how you can create an experience for them instead of just creating the best board game. It's so much more important to have that in mind. So that's that, and that's all you got to ask yourself. Those 4 things. I described a lot of why, but to summarize so you can look at this quickly, you can maybe even take a screenshot of this. What makes a game good? What makes a game bad? How do the theme and mechanics support each other and create an experience? And why do I like or not like this game personally? That's it. Those are the 4 questions. Now we're going to get on to more tips about just things that I think that you should know as you are starting this journey as a game designer. I have 2 more tips. I think they're going to go a lot faster. So if you've already learned something about game design that you didn't know before, make sure you drop a like and let me know in the comments what you learned. Obviously, these 2 next tips are also super, super important. In fact, I think they're more important than this one. I don't know. They're all important. But yeah, so we're going to get on to them right now. Thank you so much for sticking around, and hopefully you're learning a lot because I'm having a lot of fun talking about this because I just love game design so much. I think I'm gonna put this game away. Guys, I love this game so much. Guys, I'm so happy to finally be making content about board game design. I've been wanting to do it since before we started making any videos. If you are interested in hearing more from us about game design, I would love to make more content. You just let us know what you want to learn, what would be important to you, what would be valuable for you, and we would love to see if we can make something about it. If you want to become a board game designer, you should read about board game design, watch videos on YouTube about board game design. Look, listen, you're already completing step 2 as we speak. So right now you're obviously here to learn. You obviously care. You're obviously dedicated enough to learn. And basically, the idea is people have been designing board games for so long, and the industry as a whole has come a long way. We have learned so much. I say we, I'm like been here for 10 minutes and I've made 0.5 games. Anyways, if you decided to become a game designer and go rogue, completely ignoring all of the stuff that we've already learned, essentially, all of these design lessons, all of these fundamentals, all of the things that those books and podcasts and videos and stuff can teach, you're literally just missing out on a huge wealth of knowledge that's just going to slow you down by having to figure that all out with your own experience. These people have failed time and time again and have learned from it over and over again. So they have lessons that they want to teach you. Essentially, you are saving yourself so much effort, time, turmoil, and directly improving the finished product of your game by learning all these things. I'm going to link as many resources as I can find in the description of this video. The podcast Ludology has so many fantastic episodes discussing all these different things that you might be wondering and things that are going to help you to frame game design as a whole. I've listened to so many episodes of Ludology and I love that podcast so much. There's some fantastic books. I haven't read almost any of them. I've read a good amount of one called The Art of Game Design by, I think, Jesse Schell. That might be wrong. I could look it up. Should I look it up? I was right. So it's called The Art of Game Design, A Book of Lenses by Jesse Schell. It is essentially a textbook with tons of valuable information, and it's written in a way that is enjoyable to read, but it's dense with just so many good lessons. The idea of the book is that it's going to give you 50 lenses that will help you to essentially look at your game and ask the right questions to improve the game for a certain, if you want the game to be accomplishing a certain thing. It's essentially a bunch of what this first tip was. My first tip for you guys was asking these questions when you play any game, and then subsequently you're going to be wanting to ask those questions as you're playtesting. This book, A Book of Lenses, is a ton of those questions, essentially. It gives you so many tools and things to ask yourself when you are designing your game. It's invaluable. I've learned so much from it already. I'm going to have to reread it from the start whenever I start reading it. This book is fantastic and so worth reading. I can't even believe it. And honestly, it's really one of the only game design books I've read. But I want to read more. If you are watching this video and you know a lot about game design and actually have read a lot of these books, definitely recommend these in the comments if there are any books that I should read as an aspiring game designer. There's some that I've been meaning to, but yeah, it would be super, super great if you had any of those recommendations. Same with podcasts, YouTube channels. I know New Board Game Design has been making some fantastic content about designing a game, and he's been designing a game himself and is taking you on that journey, which is super fun. We've been wanting to do something similar, a sort of devlog for board games, because there's tons of videos like that for video games for indie game developers who are making a video game and taking you on that journey. And we're like, well, listen, we're board game designers. We make videos. We got to do that for our board games. And honestly, there's one that I'm designing right now that I might do that because I've been so excited about that design. I might take you along with me. If you're interested in that at all, like, please let me know in the comments if you want to see what I've been designing and what I've been learning as I'm designing this game. We'd love to make a video about it. New Board Game Design has some fantastic content if you are interested. I'm going to link his channel in the info card right there. Please, you gotta check his videos out. If you're interested in game design, absolutely. If you're not, and you just like board games, still check them out. They're great videos, they're entertaining, and they give you an interesting look into what game design is like, which, I mean, you gotta be interested, right? How does this happen? What is the process? I want to hear from you. Let me know in the comments below what games you want to see made. If you have an idea, what games would you be designing? What games do you want to design? Or if you already designed some, let me know what they are. It doesn't matter if you've published them. I just want to hear about the games that you have created or that you want to create. So yeah, anyways, there's going to be some resources in the description. This is going to be super valuable. If you want to be a game designer, I promise this is one of the best things you can do. Going into the third tip very soon, I have to preface with this. And like I just mentioned, I've been designing a board game right now, and I'm so excited about it. It has just been overtaking my brain, and all of my free time I'm just designing and writing and thinking about ideas and coming up with all these systems, and it's so fun, and I'm so dang excited about the game. If, again, like I said, if you're interested, I'll dive into what's going on with that game design in another video, but for now, here's the thing about it. Because it's a card game, I am required to have a bunch of cards designed before I could ever play it. It just makes it much more difficult to create a prototype and play it. So I haven't done it yet, and I'm going to do it soon, hopefully today or tomorrow. Well, probably not today or tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow night, actually. Anyways, I'm just like, I'm itching to do it, but I still have to design some more cards, so it's just holding me back. But here's my last tip for you. It's the most important one. It's also sometimes maybe the hardest. And essentially, the last tip, if you are interested in becoming a board game designer, is design a game. Start, try, go for it, do your thing. Whatever that idea is that's been in your head and that you've been wanting to make for a long time, a game that you want to see exist in the world, but doesn't, design it. Go for it. And I just want to encourage you to start now, because that's just the best thing you can do. This is going to be the moment that changes the trajectory of you as a board game designer. You starting your first design, or if you've designed some games before or tried to, start again, and try one more time with a new idea. There's so many ideas. I have like a list of over 50 just random like ideas. Like, what if there's a game that's like this? What if there's a game that uses this mechanic? What if there's a game that's all about this? And if you're like me, maybe you'll start keeping that sort of list, and when you want to design a game, go, which one can I do and how can I do this? If, again, you're interested, we will make videos about how to translate an idea to a game and what sort of goes into that and what I've personally learned from doing that. But essentially, what I want to say about this right now is there's a fundamental concept in game design that is the overall arc of designing a game is this. You have an idea, you make a prototype, and you play it. That's playtesting. And after you play it, you go, hold on, what can we do differently? What can we make this, how can we make this better? How can we make this work better? What didn't work? What wasn't fun? What was fun? All these questions, like I've said, what the Book of Lenses was about and what my first tip was all about. And then you redesign it and you change some rules, you adjust things, and essentially it's just this loop for a long time. You play test it and you make an adjustment. You play test it and you make an adjustment, and you're just constantly changing the game, and it's always in flux until you go, this is the game, and you hit publish. That's not how it works. You don't just hit publish. What's the most important about this as someone who's new is to make a prototype as fast as possible. It's so important to cut all of the fluff beforehand and just play that game. Play test it as soon as you can, because that's going to be so much more value, so much more efficient than if you spend hours and days and weeks thinking about how the game could work. Instead, just try something. My third piece of advice was literally make a prototype faster and don't spend so much time with it in your head. Yet I've spent hours and days with this game without a prototype. I'm literally breaking my own rule, and we'll see how it goes. I'm preparing myself for the game to not work very well and to not be very fun, but in my head, it's so dang good. So we'll see how it goes. If you want to hear me talking about what games I think are great, I've got a video that is just 7 games that I think that you have to play that are just fantastic, and I love all those games so much. So hopefully you will enjoy this video, but either way, thank you so much for sticking around and hanging out with me while I talk about game design. It's a lot of fun, so thanks so much.